fade to black. Come on. That's cool, right? All right, guys, we're talking EQ today. I've got this. That's a good start, hey? Give the big we can Pro Tools that, right? Get rid of the Y'all know how to do that. Do that for me. All right. I've given you this. Yeah, magical, right? It's on the screen right here. I've given you this sheet. It's a general outline of all the things you got to do. In setup, you probably already know about all of these guys that have to go in a particular order to try to keep it organized. Guitars, keys, vocals, all that stuff. You know all about bussing at this point, where a bus is essentially a wire. It's an imaginary wire that's going to stay inside Pro Tools and carry audio around inside Pro Tools. You know that stuff already. You've got all these submasters that are drum submasters and bass submasters and guitar submasters. Awesome. If you've done your edits already, then you're ready for this. If you haven't done your edits, go back and do some edits. What are these edits I'm talking about? You want to do some time aligning, making sure that your click track is ready to go. That if you haven't used Beat Identifier or Elastic Audio, this is more of a bio. It's more of a biology thing, guys. It's more of an Audio 25 item. This Beat Detective is definitely an Audio 25 thing, but Beat Identifier, which is Command I, is a way to get your click to land right on the performance that may have wandered around a little bit. We're not going to move the performance, but we're going to be able to move the click onto a performance that's not totally in time. If you've done your gain stage and you've done your panning and you've done all of these other edits to stop the crosstalk and the mic bleed on all of these items, then you are ready to start the rest of this. We're going to talk a little bit about compression moving forward, but I'm going to hit EQ right now. So let me jump to right here. EQ is a way to help change the sound of your instrument or a vocal to make it sound better. If you are just going to use presets and say, hey, this is the top of the snare drum, make it sound better, then congratulations, you're going to get replaced by AI. I want you to be able to use the EQ tools that you have in your computer to try to make the sound better. How do we do that? I'm going to show you some tools, but I'm also going to give you from this sheet right here some starting points. I don't want you to use presets. I want you to use these as starting points. So for example, and again, these are not rules. These are just an idea. If you're working on a kick drum, these are places that I like to go to. I like to move my 60 hertz or my 80 hertz, somewhere in there, depending on how the kick sounds. And I like to boost in the 60 to 80 hertz range. How much? That depends. At least that's a spot for you to go to 60 or 80 and lift it or drop it and say, what do I like sound? What do I think sounds better? How about 2.4 to 3.4 or 4.4, 4.5 kilohertz to get a little bit more snap? Where do we hear the beater click? I want to hear that click in the beater of the kick drum in order to match the style of music. Is it rock? Is it heavy metal? Is it country? Country, I move down here to about the 4 kilohertz. Heavy metal, I have a little bit more of an aggressive beat or click. If it's rock, somewhere kind of right in between. So that's where AI doesn't know what to do. We're going to be able to outperform AI by using our ears and our intelligence in order to craft the sound properly. Okay, well, this is going to give us an idea of where to pick things to lift or to cut or attenuate. The word is attenuate, to bring stuff down. But how do we do it? I'm going to say that here in a low shelf boost, we got to remember that the low notes, low notes are on the left. The high notes are on the right. So if we're going to boost the low notes, this is going to be all flat there, and now we're going to boost it down at the bottom. Well, what does the curve look like if it's a low shelf attenuate? Well, we're going to take that and cut. Not cut all the way off, we're just going to turn them down a little bit. What about a high shelf boost? Well, I'm going to be looking at the high side, and we're going to boost just the high parts. Oh, I got to get my head out of the way for this next part. And the high shelf attenuate, you got it. It's at the high end, and I'm going to turn it down. So what does that sound like? Well, let's cut to this. Here I've got a song. I'm just going to pick a little spot. I'm going to bring a vocal in here. I'll write to you with ink from a pen. All right. Let me bring a keyboard or there's a keyboard, there's a vocal in there. There's a Pro Q3. I'll write to you with ink from a pen. And I put a low shelf in there. If I boost it, you can hear how that changes. I'll write to you with ink from a pen. Well, now I'm going to cut that, a low shelf cut. I'll write to you with ink from a pen. So we can cut the low end out. What about a high shelf? I'll write to you with ink from a pen. So that's just straight. Let's lift it. I'll write to you with ink from a pen. Kind of brings a little bit of air and sparkle to it. I'll write to you with ink from a pen. Back to normal, and I'll cut it. I'll write to you with ink from a pen. That's the shelf. Let's go to the bell. A bell is easy. We can go a bell, boost, and we're going to look at the Q value. The Q value means how wide is this boost. So a wide boost is going to be like this. A narrow boost is going to be like this. An attenuate means I'm going to cut that down. There you go. And a narrow one is going to be like this. Well, what then is a notch? A notch is a special kind of bell that's super sharp, very, very narrow Q, and cuts all the way to the bottom in order to remove something like a nose whistle or an alarm in the background or a particular frequency from the fans that you just need to chop out, but you don't want to wipe out a whole bunch of other frequencies. So that would look like this. So we've cut out just a very narrow little bit. Let's see what that does to our sound. I'm going to take this back off here. I'm going to kill that, play it for you. Oops.
Feel the way
I'll just highlight that. I will get the same lyric going.
my mind moves too fast for my head.
And here's a bell boost.
My mind moves too fast for my head.
So I can move that left or right.
My mind moves too fast for my head.
And here's a cut.
My mind moves too fast for my head.
Cool. And we can adjust the Q value.
Moves too fast for
Oops, sorry, here's the Q. To be a little bit more surgical in our motion.
moves too fast for my head. My mind moves too fast for my head. My mind moves too fast for my head.
Beauty. I'll try to find a notch here. We've got one right. Where did we go? Here's the notch. And we can just sweep that left or right to find the frequency that we want to remove. Oops.
I'll write to you with ink from a pen. I'll write to you.
So this is supposed to be hard to find, hard to detect, because it's such a narrow cut. We're going to find one problem frequency and remove it without affecting the tone as a whole. Well, let's go to the very end of this discussion, and that's where we talk about the high pass and the low pass. Probably shouldn't be at the very end, because this is one of the most important things that you'll ever do, and that is to high pass a lot of your stuff. When you high pass, another word for this, high pass, we're allowing the highs to pass through while we cut the lows. So I'm going to take everything here and cut off the lows. This is different from a low shelf attenuate, because here we're actually cutting them all the way down, whereas we'll go a different color here. A low pass is we're going to allow the lows to pass through, and then we're going to cut off the highs. Why would we do this? A high pass is often used in order to cut out the frequencies that we don't want in our mix. Things that are picked up by a microphone that you don't want. Low rumbles from the building. The air conditioner that moves air that we don't hear, but it's picked up by the mic, and we don't want to have that confusing the push-pull of our speakers. That's telling the speakers to move when we don't really want them to do that. We want to reserve the push and pull in the low end for the low notes that we are telling the speakers to do. We want good punch in our low end. Good. Make sure we high pass all those things that are not supposed to be telling the speaker to move in the low end. Vocals, guitars, keyboards, any brass, any open mic. You high pass those things to make sure that there's no accidental low end information going to the speakers telling them to move. We want to reserve that motion for only the low end instruments. What then is a band pass? A band pass is kind of like a high pass and a low pass that work together, where we will cut off that section and we'll cut off that section. So we're really only allowing a certain pass or a certain frequency to get passed through. This will often sound kind of like an AM radio or a telephone. We can cut off the highs, we can cut off the lows, and make it sound kind of weird. So let me come back one more time to our vocal. I'll pick a section.
I'm so glad I found you, the old-fashioned
And in Fab Filters, they actually do change the name here from a high pass to a low cut. Oh, that's not what I wanted. I'm just going to take that off, cut that out.
I'm so glad I found you the old-fashioned way.
And this is very gradual. I don't like that, how it takes off. If I want to cut all those lows out of there, I got to go all the way out here, and it's going to remove a lot of the things I don't want. So we usually like to steepen that up to 24 or 30 or something like that. And I'll let you listen to it, because look how much I can take off without affecting the vocal sound.
I'm so glad I found you the old-fashioned way.
There we go. Once you hear it,
I'm so glad I found you the
it's too far.
old-fashioned way.
Go back.
I'm so glad I found you.
You want to go a little
the
steeper?
old-fashioned way. I'm so glad I found you the old-fashioned way.
There we go. And so we want to take as much away as we can without affecting the tone. That's going to clean up our low end. You want to do that to the high end as well? Well, oops. It's all right.
Found you the old-fashioned way. I'm so glad I found you the old-fashioned way.
So we're
I'm so glad I found you the old-fashioned way.
probably wouldn't do it on a vocal. Here's where we would use it on like a hi-hat that has a lot of high-end just abrasiveness into the mix. A hi-hat, maybe the overheads, maybe some top-end brass that you just want to tame down a little bit. So we would pull that down. But this is generally where we're going to go. The tilt and the flat tilt, you can experiment with those things, but there's not a lot of use to stuff like that. That's just a little bit more novelty, to be honest. Thank you very much, guys. Get busy with this stuff and get trying. You're not going to learn any of this stuff without getting your hands wet, and pull up your sleeves, pull up the sleeves of your ears, and get busy. Fade to black.